place where they worship. And I have a responsibility tonight to thank the people of Ellerton for the civil and the very gracious way in which you have allowed my wife and my daughter to become a member of your community. I truly, truly thank you. Tonight I have come to do two things. The first is to ask you to give me Dwight Sutherland. I have to ask. I have manners. I have to ask you to give me Dwight Sutherland to help constitute the next government of Barbados. I really have to ask you. Dwight Sutherland is the most talented young man who has had his roots in this constituency, in this district. He is a true St. George man. Like me, he's a man that is vertically challenged. And I have a lot of work for him to do. And not only in St. George, but he brings capabilities to the Barbados Labour Party that I will find the greatest use for. But this campaign is one of the most important campaigns we'll ever have in Barbados. Our country is falling behind and is in danger of going under. Our people are hurting in a way that they have never heard it before. Businesses are failing. Businesses are losing confidence in the government. The people are hurting. And in this campaign, I have told the Barbados Labour Party that we will have zero tolerance to verbal abuse from these platforms. There will be no talking of people's names from these platforms. We are not going to get into the vicious kind of personal vilification that we're hearing from the Democratic Labour Party. The issues have to be addressed. And every time we go to a constituency and there's a DLP person who was a minister, the stewardship of that minister has also to be the subject of discussion. This election is as much a referendum on the Democratic Labour Party because they have to account, as it is our request for a vote of confidence from you to give you a better tomorrow. So tonight I want to hold, what's her name again? Because I can't get her name called too good. So Colbert to account. And I say this, and I'm not being personal, that when you hear what I have to say in relation to how Suku has managed the Ministry of Labour and has caused Barbados to be brought to a point of crisis, when you hear what I have to say about how Suku is managing our national insurance and putting your future in peril, you will begin to understand why Barbados cannot afford the luxury of this young lady, who is easily the most incompetent minister ever to hold ministerial office in this country. And she's not only incompetent, she's also insensitive. You know, the first thing that Suku did was that there's a gentleman called Sir Everton Weeks. And Sir Everton Weeks, in 1950, in the words of Lady Constantine, was helping to bring an end to empire. In 1950, and I speak especially to the young people, when we were still colonies of Britain, a West Indies cricket team went to England and for the first time beat England on British soil. And that said to the world that we, the people of the Caribbean, were ready to stand on our own 2 feet. Eventually, Errol Barrow and others brought independence to us. But the trail was blazed by our cricketers. I tell people that in 1966, when Errol Barrow and Henry Ford and others were seeking independence in the rooms of London, Garfield Sobers was showing on the cricket field that the Barbadians were better than the English. And in recognition of the tremendous work that Everton Weekes, a distinguished Barbadian, did for this country, as Minister of Finance and Prime Minister said Everton Weekes must not be allowed to walk and drag in Barbados. He's done too much for our country, and that he had to be given a consultancy for life to go and work in the schools to restore Barbadian cricket by getting young people at the schools interested in cricket again. And the first thing that Suku did was to fire Everton Weekes. To fire Everton Weekes and to take bread out of Everton Weekes' mouth. A man who has done more for Barbados' name than Suku ever did. I was amused that David Thompson made her the Minister of Family, and that she was walking around Barbados telling us about family values and how husbands and wives must live together in unity. I was amused by that, but he soon came to his senses, and for good reasons had to move her from the Ministry of Family, but that's not my point tonight. My point is this, that Barbados has always and must always continue to enjoy a reputation for stability in its industrial relations. We don't have a lot. We do not have bauxite nor gold. But people come here and invest because we have kept this country stable. And our stability is represented in many ways. But it is represented in the fact that if there is an industrial conflict, we find the way to deal with it. As Prime Minister of this country, I spent more time solving industrial relations conflicts than any other Prime Minister in the country. And I left the campaign trail in December 2007 and solved a problem that was brewing between Cable and Wireless and the Barbados Workers' Union. I stopped canvassing for the Labour Party because it was important to me. It was important to me that Barbados' name should not be tarnished by industrial unrest. Today, this country is tottering again on the brink of industrial relations instability. And it is all caused, for reasons that I will read out to you tonight, by the behavior of a Minister of Labour who does not understand how a Minister of Labour should behave. A Minister of Labour must relate, Suku, to both Labour and private companies from a position of good faith. And when you have given your word to one, that word must be the same word that you give to the next. But you can't tell the companies one thing and then go and tell the union something else, because that is the way by which conflict is engendered. And we now have a situation in Barbados where Trotman is threatening an island-wide strike because Lime has said that it is going to lay off 97 people. I have not come tonight to say that I agree that Lime should lay off 97 people. The people that Lime wants to lay off are people who were in its retail business selling phones and whatever else. 60-something of them says that they're prepared to go and take the money. But Lime has decided to lay off 97 people. Now, here's the crunch. What does the minister do? This minister, by her behavior, has brought Barbados to the point of industrial crisis. And I will read letters for you. You would hear that Frandl Stewart is calling upon Lime to apologize for not following the process. Not true? That Leroy Trotman has said that there must be a strike because Lime has not followed the process. I have here 3 letters, all written by independent agencies that were at these meetings. One by the Barbados Private Sector Association, the next by the Barbados Chamber of Commerce, and the next by the Barbados Private Sector Employers Confederation. And this is what happened, and why we are in this problem today, where there could be a general strike in Barbados because of Suku. This is a letter that was written by the Barbados Private Sector Association on the 10th of January 2013. And it says to the executive of Lime, thank you for the update following your meeting with the Minister of Labour and the Barbados Workers' Union on Wednesday, January 9th, 2013. The information which you have shared is of great concern to the Barbados Private Sector Association. He said at the meeting, they went to a meeting on January the 8th. And listen very carefully to this, because it tells you what kind of person Suku is and why she is unfit to be a minister and your representative. She said at the meeting attended by the Barbados Private Sector Association, Minister Byers Suku clearly articulated that she was satisfied that Lime had followed the process as outlined in Protocol 6 of the Social Partnership with regard to making 97 employees redundant as of December 31st, 2012. Yeah, what does that say to you? That at the meeting of 8th of January 2012, Suku met and said that Lime had followed the process to send home 97 people. He says it was further stated at the said meeting that the agenda for the meeting of January 9th, 2013 between Lime and Barbados Workers' Union organized by the minister will be to carry forward outstanding matters, including the matters of job evaluation, as the matter of redundancies is now dead. So Suku told Lime and the private sector on January that they had done the right thing and followed the right processes and 197 people. And that at the meeting of the unions, she was going to tell them that the matter of redundancies is now dead. To hear that these positions were not expressed by the ministry at the subsequent meeting with the Barbados Workers' Union is of serious concern, and we would appreciate you advising us of anything that you are aware of that is causing this inconsistency. So here's the simple facts. That Suku had a meeting with the company and the private sector agencies. I told them that the company was in good order to fire 97 people. And then she met the next day. I had a meeting with the workers' union and tell them that she does not believe in that at all. And that they have not followed the process in sending home the 97 people. And that is why we have this situation in Barbados today, where we are on the brink of a general strike in this country, because the minister goes to one meeting with one set of people and tell them one thing, send home the people, and goes to the union and says they don't want the people sent home. Now that is what the Barbados Private Sector Association said. The Barbados Employers Association said the same thing, that it was confirmed by the Minister of Labour that she considered the issue of the redundancies as now dead. The woman said send home all 97. It was therefore extremely surprising that during the joint meeting of Wednesday, January the 9th, 2013, the agreements and understanding reached at the meeting on Tuesday, January the 8th, were not specifically tabled and presented to the Barbados Workers Union. So this woman agreed with something with the company on the 8th, goes to the union on the 9th, and tells them something else. And the Barbados Chamber of Commerce says exactly the same thing. That the minister goes to a meeting, says the process is in order, send them home, and then go and tell the union something else. So that when Frandel Stewart is calling out for an apology from Lyme, and I'm not here to pick up Lyme's case, Barbados must never be governed in a way that a minister of labor can cause a crisis in this country by having to settle negotiations and tell the companies one thing and the unions something else. And that if Suku has told the unions, has told the companies, send home the 97 people, that you followed the process, then I cannot understand how Trotman and Frandel Stewart cannot be pressing the company for an apology. The apology should come from Suku, who does not understand that a minister of any form, but most especially a minister of labor, must treat to people in good faith. And St. George, the same lack of good faith that Suku has shown in dealing with this matter concerning the 97 people at Lyme is the same lack of good faith that she has shown in representing you in St. George. Don't you remember that she had a personal assistant that worked the length and the breadth of this constituency, and that young girl did so much for Suku. And then she unfair the young girl, put the girl out to work, so that the livelihood of 98 people are in Suku hands. The 97 who had to go home from Lyme, and the one personal assistant who she unfaired. Now, Suku is also the minister responsible for the national insurance. And tonight I've come to address with you, if you would allow me, serious matters concerning how our national insurance resources are being used and the peril that the national insurance is being put in, and that what we will have to do in Barbados to bring back good order to this country by making sure that integrity is restored to our national insurance. And I feel very passionate about this. You know, in the United States of America, they are having a problem. Obama is having a problem in fixing their Social Security. Why? Because like us, they are becoming an aging society. Barbados is becoming an aging society, and we had to fix our national insurance. And if we didn't fix it, that it was going to go bankrupt by 2030, or that it would take 4 Barbadians working to pay the old age pension of 1 Barbadian. Now that would be too big a burden on Barbadians. So that under my prime ministership, I assembled a task force and said, let us fix the national insurance so that this generation and the next generation and all future generations of Barbadians will be sure that the fund will not go bankrupt. That when you come to get your pension will be there for you. I say I'm reaching the age of retirement. I greatly have come to appreciate how important a pension can be in people's lives. And I say this, that I am proud of the way in which the administration that I led fixed the national insurance. Because what we have done in Barbados is, as I said, what Obama and the United States would like to do. And what are some of the things that we did? We told you that you can either retire early or have a later retirement. And we changed the rates. But we fixed the national insurance. So much so now that the national insurance now is very, very, very viable. The Democratic Labour Party and SOCO is now treating the national insurance as if it is a slush fund. And tonight I want to read out, because you all must be told these things. I want to read out the wrong things that are being done at the national insurance that, unless they are corrected, will put you in a position where a day may come when you cannot get your old age pension. The first thing that SOCO did, as you remember, is for a man called Tony Marshall. Tony Marshall is a decent man. You heard him on the call-in programs. But he was fired at the national insurance, although he's a dem, for refusing to do things that he and the board felt would put the national insurance in peril. So she fired Tony Marshall, just like she fired her personal assistant, and just like she agreed that 97 people at Lyme should be fired. Then the national insurance is building 2 office buildings at Warrens. There's one close to that big tree, we call it the Boba or work tree, at the bottom next to Jackson. And there's one next to Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now, the national insurance is encouraged by the government from time to time to make investments in building buildings on the understanding that the national insurance has to invest its money somewhere to be able to get a return on its investment, to be able to pay you your pension when your pension falls due. You understand that? So that the United Nations building that we built to house the United Nations in Barbados is a national insurance building, but I insisted that it had to get at least 12% rate of return on building that building, because why? When your time comes to get a pension, the money must be there to pay you. Then don't you agree that it has to be wrong for the government of Barbados to require the national insurance to build a building for it and then refuse to pay the national insurance a cent of rent for occupying the building? Now, the national insurance has built 2 office blocks at Warrens. It has refused, the government has refused to sign the lease of the building, although it is the one in the Warrens in Jackson is occupied by government offices. And to this day, the government has not paid national insurance a penny in rent for the building built by national insurance in Jackson Bottom that the government now have government offices in. You understand how your pension can be put at risk? Secondly, the board has been pressured to hand over the keys because government will be embarrassed if the keys are not handed over. The national insurance is also being pressured by the government to buy the unfinished houses at Coverley. You understand what I tell you? That this government encouraged a company to go and build houses at Coverley that are so expensive that ordinary people cannot buy them. And to bail out their friends at Coverley, the board of the national insurance is requiring the insurance to buy the unfinished houses at Coverley to bail out the investors as the houses are not selling. The board has thus far resisted it. The National Insurance has been asked to buy Almond Beach for the employees to run. Now, Almond Beach is in my constituency. Almond Beach ought to be left as a private investment to be purchased and run by the private sector. There is no good reason why Almond Beach should be asked to be bought by the National Insurance. The National Insurance, as you know, has been pressured to fund the Four Seasons project. And that project, I'm sad to say, is going nowhere. It is going nowhere as a project funded by the National Insurance or the Inter-American Development Bank. That project is a project that they sought to bring to Barbados. It is the last remaining piece of land on the west coast of Barbados suitable for development as a hotel and a resort. And if it is something that cannot be developed by the private sector, the National Insurance should be careful of taking your money and putting your money in it. But the board of the National Insurance has been being pressured to invest your money in the Four Seasons project. I can go on. There's a thing called the catastrophe fund. Believe me, when you're in government, the worst thing that you can do is feel powerless. A government should be in a position to help people. And when you're in government, you feel, or we used to feel powerless. Whenever there was a hurricane in this country, and poor people needed help, and we couldn't help. Now, the people that you cannot help when there's a hurricane are the people who cannot get insurance. Because ordinarily, if you've got a wall house or whatever else, and you have a mortgage, you must have insurance. But the people who cannot get insurance are simple people living in chattel houses. So, whenever there was a disaster, my government struggled to help those people because we did not have a fund to help them. And we decided that we were going to put this behind us once and for all. And we decided to create a thing called a catastrophe fund, into which we will put every year $2.5 million and build it up so that if a hurricane hit Barbados, the next day, we know where the money is going to come from to help putting things right again with poor people. That makes sense to you? Isn't that the kind of society that you want to live in? Now, we have built up the catastrophe fund. And what is the Democratic Party doing? This fund should be there in case Barbados is hit with a hurricane in 2013. But what the Democratic Party has done is change the law and stop this fund from being a fund to help poor people in the event that their houses are destroyed by a hurricane, and says that the Urban and Rural Development Commission can now go to this fund and say we built some houses 10 years ago for poor people. And we want now that money that should be to help people in the future to come back to us to lick out. To lick out. And I suspect it is one of the reasons why Frandel delayed this election so long. That he's looking for money to lick out. And that the catastrophe fund that we created to help poor people, they don't want to let the Urban and Rural Development Commission go and dip in it and lick it out. Now, I raise this point because when we created the catastrophe fund, we said the National Insurance had to manage it. And that the National Insurance had to establish a committee to manage it so that only poor people's houses are fixed. But they are pressuring the National Insurance to give this money over to the Urban and Rural Commission on the eve of an election to lick out and lick out and lick out. And come the hurricane season and something hit Barbados again like Thomas, the government would have no means by which to respond. Your Suku is presiding over that for the time being. The National Insurance, the government is building a headquarters up by the pine called the Barbados Workers' Party, Barbados Water Authority headquarters. David Eswick and Chris Sinclair are fighting over it. And although Cabinet has said that a letter of comfort has to be issued to the people who are providing the resources, Chris Sinclair, as Minister of Finance, refused to provide the letter of comfort that will let Ansel McCall proceed with funding the building of that project. And guess what? The National Insurance is being pressured to do. That they are being pressured to take over investors in the Barbados Water Authority headquarters. And that, you know what would happen if that's the case? Ansel McCall and others will lay claim on the land and will lay claim on $56 million of your taxpayers' funds if the agreement to finance the properties are not followed through. All of these things are being done at the National Insurance. And they get me vexed, Suku, because I went to great lengths, the government had led, to put that National Insurance fund in a condition that you and your grandchildren can be sure that come the day when you need it, that the fund will be there for you. And believe me, you must believe me when I tell you that we want to get back to office. Because these things are there that will destroy Barbados if they're allowed to continue. And that part of our making way for a better future is to take these things out of the hands of idiots like Suku and restore order, restore good order to the running of the affairs of this country. There's another matter that I must touch on before I leave. The Democratic Labour Party is insistent on destroying all vestiges that there was ever a Barbados. The Democratic Labour Party is insistent on removing from this land any vestige that there was a Barbados Labour Party. It is the politics of spite. It is the politics of tribalism. And the image of Grantley, I do not begrudge Errol Barrow. I think Errol Barrow was a wonderful Barbadian. He was the father of our independence. He was the father of CARICOM. And I respect him so much that I made him a national hero. And that, believe me, I put a statue in Independence Square so that the Barbadians of another generation will recognize that there was a great man, not of my party, but that we respect them and must respect them. One of Grantley Adams' greatest legacies in this country was that when he became the Premier of Barbados, working people had no lot in this country. Grantley Adams is a great, 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 great man. And young Barbadians need to be told of some of the things that we don't take for granted that are the handiwork of that great, great, great man. Our tourism industry was started by not Errol Barrow, but by the vision of Grantley Adams being something called the Development Board to Barbados. Manufacturing, Grantley Adams Development Board again. Barbados' development started in earnest when Grantley Adams built the Deepwater Harbor. And he lost an election for it because men lost their job who were lecturers. The Queen Elizabeth Hospital is Grantley Adams' work. And that man was a great man, and his greatness is not what he built, but how he's changed the social relations of our system. And before Grantley Adams, people didn't have to vote. My grandfather was a vestryman from St. Lucie, he could vote, but my father's mother, that he had a relationship, could not. And Grantley changed that. But Grantley Adams gave working people a lot in Barbados that you must never forget. That before Grantley Adams, you worked, but you did not have holiday with pay. And one of the most revolutionary pieces of legislation ever brought to this country was that Grantley Adams, in 1951, determined that working people in this country deserve vacations, and if you got vacation, you had to get paid during vacation. Now we take these things for granted, but in the context of 1951, this was truly revolutionary. Now the Democratic Party want to wipe Grantley Adams off the face of this country. And you know, his statue is outside government headquarters on Bay Street, and they want to move the Prime Minister's office to someplace else. Well, I ain't going there. They want to move it down to Warren's. So his image goes. When you hear that they want to build a new hospital, it is to cause you to forget that the QAH was Grantley Adams. But they insisted on bringing to Parliament a piece of legislation that would abolish the Holiday with Pay Act that is one of Grantley Adams' greatest contribution to the advancement of working people, and they wanted to abolish it so merely as to amend it. Now, ordinarily, if there's something wrong with an act, you amend it. But to amend an act, they wanted to remove it from the statute books and replace it by a new act that would not carry Grantley Adams' name. And how they wanted to amend it, that under the Holiday with Pay Act, your pay during your holiday is based clearly on your ordinary pay. And if you earn commissions, and that can be calculated, yes. But your holiday can't be paid, your pay during your holiday cannot be based on overtime. Because clearly when you're on holiday, you're not getting overtime. So that they wanted to amend the holiday, take out Grantley Adams Act entirely, and amend it and replace it with an amendment that says that we change the basis for calculating pay by taking into account not just your base pay, but your overtime as well. Now, in that way, two things would have happened. A large number of businesses in this country would have collapsed because the business can't afford to pay you during your vacation based upon overtime that you're not working for. So somebody got to be a fool to believe that you can get a business to pay people overtime when they're not working for overtime. And secondly, all that she was seeking to do is to make sure that the name of Grantley Adams is no longer part of the record of this country. And these things are wrong. And I am glad that the private sector of Barbados has told her that the way in which this government wanted to amend the Holiday with Pay Act was a piece of insanity that would have destroyed every business in Barbados that now has to find all that money to pay people overtime when they were on the beach. So tonight I've come to Ellerton to say that there has to be a sense of seriousness in Barbados. You can't reward somebody with electoral success who has failed so spectacularly. That the argument against returning Sukuk to the House is that she has failed in every ministry in which she has been asked to function. But she has failed every time in a way that has virtually brought this country to the brink of crisis. And that Leroy Trotman, Frandel Stewart, stop asking Lime for an apology when all that Lime is seeking to do is what Suku told them is the right thing to do. Frandel, you shouldn't be quarreling with Lime. You should have fired Suku for incompetence. And since you have not fired her, I have come to St. George to tell you that what Frandel had failed to do, you shall do. And I have also come to beg you. The Dems believe that if they win this seat, they win the government. But I have letting you know that if the Labour Party win this seat, deliverance day shall be there. And I am asking you to find it in your heart. I have come to tell you that it is up in your hands in St. George that you can seal the deal.